You're listening to the Chapter a Day Bible Study. I'm John Stange, and today we're in Exodus 38, the materials for the tabernacle. Exodus 38 describes the construction of the bronze altar, the courtyard, and then carefully lists the amounts of gold, silver, and bronze used for the tabernacle. It isn't a passage with dramatic dialogue, and we don't see thunder or miracles unfolding in real time. And yet this chapter teaches us something important about God, about worship, and about how all of it points forward to Jesus. This chapter reminds us that God doesn't overlook details, and he doesn't forget what his people bring to him. The chapter opens with the altar of burnt offering made of bronze. Exodus 38:1 tells us, "He made the altar of burnt offering of acacia wood. 5 cubits was its length, and 5 cubits its breadth. It was square, and 3 cubits was its height." This altar sat at the entrance of the tabernacle courtyard. Before anyone could draw near to God, sacrifice had to happen first. God designed worship so that access to him required bloodshed and substitution. Sin demanded a cost. The altar wasn't hidden inside the tent. It stood right up front. Every worshiper had to pass it. This points us directly to Jesus. Long before the cross, God was teaching his people that forgiveness isn't free, even though grace is. Hebrews 9:22 reminds us that without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. Jesus fulfilled what this bronze altar only symbolized. He became the final sacrifice, offered once for all, so we wouldn't have to bring animals to an altar ever again. Next, Exodus 38 describes the courtyard that surrounded the tabernacle. Linen hangings formed a boundary with pillars, bases, hooks, and fillets, all precisely described. Verse 9 says, "He made the court. For the south side, the hangings of the court were of fine twined linen, 100 cubits." God set clear boundaries around his dwelling place. This wasn't about keeping people out. It was about teaching them that approaching a holy God requires care, reverence, and obedience. You couldn't just wander in casually. God invited his people near, but he defined the way. Jesus later illustrated this truth when he said, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." We see this in John 14:6. The courtyard pointed to the reality that access to God is real and gracious, but it's also specific. Jesus didn't just show us the way, he is the way. Then the chapter shifts gears and becomes almost entirely about accounting. Exodus 38:21 introduces the record. It says, "These are the records of the tabernacle of the testimony, as they were recorded at the commandment of Moses." So what follows is a careful inventory of metals, measured by weight, broken down by purpose, and traced back to the contributions of the people. This part of the chapter is probably easy to skim for most readers. I would assume that that's probably what most people do when they come to this passage. Now, admittedly, numbers don't always stir our hearts, but think about what God's doing here. He's showing that every offering mattered. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was forgotten. The gold, the silver, the bronze, it was brought by the people, and it was handled with honesty and accountability. Verse 25 tells us, "The silver from those of the congregation who were recorded was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary." That silver came from the ransom money given by each person counted in the census. Every individual mattered. Every contribution was counted. Well, that truth carries forward into the gospel. Jesus doesn't overlook what his people give, whether it's time, obedience, service, or sacrifice. For instance, in Mark 12, he pointed out a widow who gave 2 small coins and said she gave more than everyone else because God measures differently than we do. More than that, this careful accounting in Exodus 38, it reminds us that Jesus himself was given intentionally and purposefully. He wasn't a random solution to a problem that God just happened to notice. Scripture tells us he was foreknown before the foundation of the world. We see that in 1 Peter 1:20. God planned redemption with precision, just like he planned the tabernacle. Now, the metals listed in Exodus 38, they also tell a story. Gold was used inside the tabernacle, and silver formed the bases, and bronze stood at the altar and courtyard. Each material had a role, a place, and a purpose, and together they formed one unified dwelling place for God. Well, in Jesus, we see the fulfillment of that unity. He brings heaven and earth together. He bridges what was separated. He takes what was temporary and fulfills it with something eternal. The tabernacle was portable, but Jesus' work is permanent. Exodus 38 teaches us that God values faithfulness, integrity, and obedience in worship. It shows us that sacrifice comes before access, that God sets the terms for how we approach him, and that he carefully accounts for what his people offer. But most importantly, it reminds us that all of this was pointing forward. The altar points to the cross. The courtyard points to the way Jesus opens access to the Father. The careful record points to a God who doesn't forget what he gives or what it costs. When we read Exodus 38 through the lens of Jesus, we see that nothing in God's plan is wasted. Nothing is accidental. And nothing offered in faith is ever overlooked. Thanks again for listening to today's episode of the Chapter a Day Bible Study. For more resources to help you in your walk with Christ and your understanding of the Bible, please visit my website at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com. And if you'd like to partner with me by becoming a supporter of this ministry, you'll see a few options to do so, again, at BibleStudyHeadquarters.com or in the description of this episode. As always, thank you for your prayers, thank you for your support, and thank you for your willingness to share this content with others. Have a great day, and I'll see you again right here tomorrow.